Okay, here we are again. It is Saturday, September the 21st. And let's see. My wife and I were having I don't know, I want to call it an argument. It's more like a discussion. We don't really argue about any of this climate stuff. We both know that it's a bad situation. It's getting worse, and there isn't any large scale move to improve our situation. Could we improve our situation vis-a-vis the Earth dynamic system? Yes, we could. Absolutely, we could. Can we stop climate change? No. Can we stop global heating? No. But those are separate questions. Those are questions in physics. The question of whether we can improve our lot in life has more to do with how humans do things, given the pressures and the opportunities and the threats and the whatever. So we have this discussion pretty regularly, and she gets she's an activist. Her background is really activism. So you would say she's a climate activist, and my background is science. So I'm a climate scientist, and we have our little exchanges and in the morning, and she'll point out that there's protests in Germany, and there were protests the day before in New York or whatever's going on, right? Or the UK or something like that. And I'm always in a good-natured kind of way asking, so what do they want? They're protesting climate. It's a climate protest. So what do they want? Do they want a climate? They have one. Everybody's got a climate. You started out with a climate. When you were born, there was a climate. Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you dry? Are you wet? That's your climate. So right away, the climate activists have a little bit of a problem. And I mention this in almost every video. It's not climate change. It can't be climate change. We have to abandon this. Because everyone's going to say, what's wrong with your climate? And you're going to say, well, nothing. It is, but it could change. But has it? Well, no. Well, then wait for it to change and then protest. This is the problem we have, is that we've been kind of led down this primrose path, that we've been convinced that the problem is climate change. And honestly, I think most people would like it to stay in that domain, because it's real easy to protest climate change, because protesting climate change, frankly, is meaningless. It's just meaningless. It sounds great. We're going to protest climate change. And it sounds great because people continue to frame the problem as climate change. So we have all these climate activists, and everyone's protesting the climate, and they want climate justice and climate action and climate this and climate that. It's like, well, you've already lost the battle then, because there's nothing wrong with your climate, and the climate changes all the time. And when you say that you want climate action, some smart-ass politician is going to say, yeah, okay, fine. What exactly do you want? What does that mean? And when you want climate justice, they're going to say, okay, I just heard you use some words. What do those words mean to you? I can't write policy about climate justice. I can only write policy about real things. And so when you finally take your demands to the leadership, when the leadership finally condescends to listen to you, and you're a climate protester and you want climate action, they're just going to paint you into a corner. And you've already painted yourself into a corner, because you don't know what those things mean. And you don't know what climate action is, and you don't know what climate justice is, and you can't write policy that's going to represent climate action, because no one knows what that means. Now, your real problem is global heating. Your actual problem is global heating. Maybe you'll get some climate change. You probably will. A lot of places might not. And some of the climate change might be beneficial. And, everyone's going to say, want to wait and see. Well, let's see what the climate change is. Maybe the climate change is good for us. Maybe it rains more. Maybe we could use the rain. Maybe it gets warmer in the winter. Maybe we would like that. Maybe some climate change would be great for our economy. Maybe we create jobs using climate change. Maybe climate change makes for a longer growing season. Wow, that could be good. So why don't we just wait and see? And so if that's what you want, then you're not going to get anything. Your problem isn't climate change. Your problem is global heating. Because global heating will destroy civilization. If you're worried about climate justice, well, okay, then you can run around and chase your tail trying to get climate justice. You don't even know what that means. No one knows what that means. No one can really spell that out. But if your problem is the destruction of civilization, and you don't want to, live out your life in the golden years of civilization as we slide into the abyss over the Seneca Cliff, if you don't want that, then you need to rethink what it is you're protesting. And you need to start thinking in very concrete terms about what it is you want. You're going to protest something. What is it you're protesting? And what is it exactly that you want? Something actionable. Stop this. Provide that. Guard against this harm. Help people do the following. Because those are actionable. If you're worried about coastal flooding, then your policy proposal might be to set aside money to get people to live on higher ground. And if you're worried about forests burning down and whole communities in these forested areas being reduced to ashes, then you may want policy to move people out of forests before the forests catch fire. See, these are actionable. And the politician will say, oh, policy, huh? We could set aside money. We could help people move out of harm's way. Get them away from the coastlines before the ocean rises and floods those areas. Get them out of the forested areas before they set the forests on fire, because that's what really happens. People set most of these fires. Get them out of the forested areas so the forests aren't set on fire quite so quickly, but also so that when the forest is on fire, they're not there. So these are things you could do. It costs money. It's policy. People have to vote on it. It's going to be messy, and there's politicians involved, and there's budgets involved, and taxation involved, and who's going to have the money? We have to have a bond, right? The interest rates on the bonds. It's messy, but it's real. If you wanted to move people out of harm's way, then you could talk about that. And therefore you have to ask yourself, well, what are the harms? And climate change is never one of them, because it doesn't have any meaning. You think it does, but it doesn't. And when you go up against politicians, you're going to find out that you've painted yourself into a corner. They're not going to respond to that because you don't know what that means. And you can't fight climate change. What laws of physics are you going to ascend with policy to fight climate change? So I wanted to go to my innovation here, my technology. Here's what's happening. This is actually dated September 20th, so this is yesterday. In New York City and elsewhere, climate protesters say pace of change isn't fast enough. Now, my first question is, what changes are you talking about? What actual changes are you talking about? Because I haven't heard any discussions of anybody changing anything. So for my purposes, as a science educator and a scientist and a researcher and data-driven person, I want to know what it is exactly you're referring to here. Because change means something to me that dwells in physics, not hippie feelings or justice or fairness or any of that other stuff. We have a problem with physics. The planet is heating. What are you proposing to change to stop that? Unless you're not proposing to stop it. If you're okay with global heating, well, then I guess you're okay with it. And what else are you going to do? Maybe we talk about those things. But if you want to change something that makes a difference, you have to stop the planet from heating. And no one's doing that. And these protesters aren't doing that either. None of them are. So I'm going to scroll down here and pull out a couple of things. This is just one article, but if you go to any article, the London Times or the MSNBC or the San Francisco Chronicle, you're going to find the same verbiage handle. I'm sorry, I stopped on that stupid ad. I hate these things. So here's the sort of thing you'll see all the time, increasingly. And with greater urgency. It's like, oh no, what are we going to do? We have to do something. We hope that the government and the financial sector make polluters pay for the damage they have imposed on our environment. That has nothing to do with climate change. Okay, so polluters, wherever they are, right? The auto industry, the energy sector, wherever the polluters are, chemical industries, big pharma, big ag, right? Yeah, okay, so they're polluters, and they can damage the environment with their pollution. What's that got to do with climate change? That has nothing. That's completely tangential. You can feel good about it. You can say that. Oh yeah, even after 70 years of fighting with polluters, we still have pollution that's damaging the environment. You could say that. I don't think your prospects for the next 70 years are very good. Frankly, I think you should have learned your lesson by now. But let's say you're looking forward to another 70 years of fighting polluters and their damage to the environment. That's not your big problem right now. I mean, go ahead. Dedicate your life to this if you want. But that's not what's going to destroy civilization. If you like civilization and you like tap water and electricity in the walls, and you like, order and security with the police departments, and you like the fire department coming to put out your fire, and you like, food being delivered to your supermarket, and you like modern medicine, big ag, modern education, if you like all those things, well, that's all contained in this thing we call civilization. And polluters damaging the environment has nothing to do with that. If, as a matter of fact, just to be brutally honest, civilization comes at a cost. And there's lots of people who will laugh and smile and point that out to you. Yes, of course we have big ag. Of course you've got cheap food in your supermarket delivered from all around the world. Of course we do. You know how we do that? We do that by damaging the environment for you. Do you want us to stop? Where's your food going to come from, you ninny? And then you'll stop talking about that. Or when they are forced, or they volunteer or whatever, to stop harming the environment to bring you food, then you'll have to deal with there's no food in the market, and then you'll be protesting that, I guess. And people will pop up and say, well, there's ways to produce food that doesn't harm the environment. Not like they're producing it now. It's a tiny little fraction of the food production doesn't harm the environment. A tiny fraction. The food you grow in your backyard maybe doesn't harm the environment. The food you get at the farmer's market, if they're growing it the way they claim to, small scale family farming, minimal use of pesticides and fertilizers and blah, blah. Maybe that doesn't harm much of the environment. But, the reason they have ag land as a, family farm is because somebody 100 years ago drained the swamp, cleared the trees, got rid of the animals, got rid of the brush, and now they have the dirt and they can family farm. And so the environmental damage was done 100 years ago on their behalf, and you get to eat that food now. See, I'm a biologist. I know how that works. The only reason that, the Salinas Valley, which is south of where I live, is full of ag land and strawberries and fruit crops and nut crops and everything, row crops of every kind, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and beets and turnips and everything else. The only reason it's full of agricultural land, whether it's organic or not, is because someone went in there with a bulldozer and cleared up all the nature. They already did the harm. So even if you come back and say, well, now that you have the land, you could grow it without harming the environment. No! The environment is gone. It's been gone. What you really want is for them to stop farming and bring the environment back. That's what you really want. That's what you're really saying. That's what this statement is about. And please notice, nowhere in here does this have anything to do with global heating. In New York City and elsewhere, climate protesters say pace of change isn't fast enough. Down here, we're talking about polluters harming the environment. This has nothing to do. Now, if they meant CO2 pollution entering the atmosphere and heating the planet, and the heat of the planet damaged the environment, then they should have said that. But they didn't. So as it stands, this has nothing to do with climate change. These people want things that don't actually address the problem. And that's not a mistake. They understand what the problem is. The problem is that they consume and are dependent upon fossil fuels. And that's what's heating the planet. And that's what's causing climate change for some people. The heating of the planet happens for everybody. But the climate change, yeah, well, maybe there's climate change down the road for somebody. And maybe it's bad. I don't know. But the planet is heating up. And that's going to be a big problem. That's going to be a big problem. That's already a big problem. And too much of that continues will absolutely 100% foursquare destroy civilization. Do you like civilization? Well, if this continues, you can't have it. And that has nothing to do with destroying the environment. That will be destroyed too, but as a consequence of global heating. That's your problem. Cause and effect. What else can I say here? This one always sends me for a loop. The New York protest wants to take aim at the pillars of fossil fuels. Oh, now we're finally talking about fossil fuels. The pillars of fossil fuels are companies that pollute, banks that fund them, and leaders who are failing on climate. Now, that's real convenient to identify. And I am no friend of the energy companies. I am no friend of the banks. Yes, they're why we have civilization. So I guess I am their friend to some extent because I'm enjoying civilization. Welcome to the internet. All right. But on the other hand, they are not the ones that are going to destroy civilization. Companies that pollute. There's that word again, pollute. What does that mean? Are we back to arguing about the environment again? What are we talking about when we say companies that pollute? Are you talking about companies that burn fossil fuels and emit CO2 into the atmosphere? Well, there are definitely companies that do that, but they're making products for our use. Your iPhone has a carbon footprint because there's a manufacturing center in Japan. Well, actually, there's some manufacturing in Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia, and it's all brought together in some factory in China. Okay? And then all that shipping of all these raw materials, and then all this manufacturing China, and then all this shipping back to the consumer nations around the world, and all of these Apple stores, and all of these credit card transactions, and finally you get your iPhone, which requires an entire network of cell phone towers, and all these server farms, and all of these networks, and all of this maintenance, and you have your iPhone, and now you can watch cat memes on your iPhone. Yes, they're polluting. And they're destroying habitat. And that your iPhone has a carbon footprint. And it's not even just the materials in your iPhone, although the materials in your iPhone has an enormous carbon footprint. The real carbon footprint of your iPhone is what you do with it. And you need all this infrastructure. It's trillions of dollars go into the creation and the maintenance of just the cell phone network. Just that alone. Just the technology and the physical plant of the cell phone infrastructure around the world. That alone is impossible without fossil fuel consumption. Utterly impossible. Banks that fund them and leaders who are failing on climate. You know where? Let's just imagine that companies that pollute. Let's just imagine for a moment. I shouldn't do this, but the word pollute here means CO2 emissions. It might not, by the way, but let's just imagine for a moment that it does. They could have said that, but they didn't. But I'm just going to imagine that that's what they mean. That's dumb on my part. And I don't like this kind of word magic, all right? But let's just imagine that that's what they mean. CO2 emissions. Who's really emitting the CO2? The consumers. Do you really think that the oil companies are just burning the oil they pull out of the ground? They just pump it out of the ground, 100 million barrels a day? Yes, that's right. That number again. I'm just going to beat you over the head with that number every chance I get. 100 million barrels of oil per day. Every fucking day. For you. Because they're not setting it on fire. They don't pump it out of the ground, let it fall out on the pavement, and then laughingly throw a match on it. They're not doing that. They're saving every drop. They put every drop into a cargo, an oil tanker, and every drop goes into refineries, and every drop is refined into useful end products like, I wonder what those could be. Diesel, gas, and kerosene for jets, possibly. Tar for the asphalt on your trillions of miles of roads. plus, you know, all the innovation that makes all that work, all your cars and all your manufacturing and everything else. That's what they're doing with it. Every drop. If a drop of oil falls on the sands in Saudi Arabia, it's a waste. They're not wasting oil, and they're certainly not setting it on fire. And if there are problems in their system and the pipelines are leaking and they're flaring natural gas at the refinery and the oil tankers, well, they burn oil to move the oil, so you're burning oil to move oil, and that's wasteful. They should be electric or they should be nuclear, right? And you could argue about how they're doing it wrong, but the point is they don't get paid to set oil on fire. That doesn't make money. What the fuck do you think they're doing with this oil and the natural gas and even the coal? What the fuck do you actually think they're fucking doing? They're not burning it. Anybody who thinks they're setting it on fire for fun is a moron. That's not what they're doing. They're selling it. They're refining it into usable products like gasoline, diesel, and kerosene, and other things, resins for plastics and all kinds of stuff. A lot of this stuff goes into pharmacology. A lot of this goes into, heavy industries. Not blood, beet juice. I'm not that savage. Yet. What do you think they're doing with the fossil fuels? Sure, they pollute, but they're polluting for us. It's just, a byproduct of providing us with all the stuff we need. And the least polluting they can do, the more money they make. And the banks and the leaders who are failing on climate. What does that actually fucking mean? Failing on climate. What the fuck are you asking for? Well, I don't want climate change. Really? Do you even have any? Well, I don't want the world's climate to change. So what? What if it gets better? You've completely lost the plot here. You want the leaders who are failing on climate. You want the leaders to succeed on climate. What does that actually mean? Because what's going to drive your climate is global heating. And if you want the leaders to weigh in on global heating, then they're going to sit back and say, cross their arms and say, okay, fine. Then we have to stop burning fossil fuels. Is that what you want? And as soon as they say that, which they will do, if you back them into a corner, they will finally reveal the awful, dreadful truth. There's all this climate action you want, and all this climate justice, and all this climate this and climate that, and failing on climate. We want to elect leaders who will do something about the climate. They're going to come down and say, okay, fine. Well, let's talk about cause and effect. The cause of all this climate bullshit you're worried about is global heating and enhancements to the greenhouse effect. And the way we're enhancing the greenhouse effect is CO2 emissions from you driving your ass down to Starbucks to get a latte. So do you want to stop driving your ass down to Starbucks to get a latte? Because I can't ask you to do that, and I can't ask Starbucks not to exist, certainly not to have a drive-in window. And so all I can do is take away your fossil fuels. Is that what you want? Because that's how we stop global heating. And as soon as the leaders of the world sit right down, cross their arms and say, all right, Sparky, sit down here. I'm gonna tell you how this shit works. You want leadership on climate? Sit down there. Sit down in that chair right there. The only thing I can do for you and your climate anxieties is to leave fossil fuels in the ground. Because that's the cause of all this. That's the cause of everything. And the fossil fuels is what's giving you your entire civilization, right down to the 5G network that you use on your iPhone that came from China. All of that, everything's so entrained in that one simple thing you do. That one simple consumer act. All of that and everything else around it is dependent on 100% every single day, 24 hours, every single day that we pull out of the ground 100 million barrels of crude oil a day. And plus, we're also pulling out natural gas and we're pulling out coal. But let's just talk about the crude oil. 100 million barrels a day. That's why you have an iPhone. That's why you have a 5G network. That's why you have a Starbucks. That's why you have food in your market. That's why you have a hospital that'll take you in the emergency room. That's why you've got college campuses. That's why everything, that's why everything is 100 million barrels a day. What do you think we're doing with 100 million barrels a day? Do you think we're just spilling it out on the ground or setting it on fire? No, we're building civilization with it. Do you like civilization? Then shut the fuck up about fossil fuels. What do these people want? They don't want an end to civilization, I'll guarantee you that. And when they finally figure out, and they may never figure out, when they finally figure out what is really required to take climate action, they won't want it. They're like, oh, you have to stop burning fossil fuels? Well, can't we burn them differently? Well, it's still CO2. Can't we burn them more efficiently? Still going to be 100 million barrels of oil a day and other things. Can't we make different kinds of car? You're still manufacturing. You're still digging up, raw materials from the earth and shipping them here and there and manufacturing this and building that and transporting that and assembling the other thing. And it all goes on a ship and it all goes to the big consumer markets in Europe and America. So, make different things, but that's what happens. Make them differently, but that's what happens. Make fewer of them. Maybe that makes a slight difference, but the markets are still little. People will want them. The price will just go up. If you make fewer of them, the price goes up. You still sell everything you want to sell. It doesn't really matter. A lot of older people want to make sure the economy is intact, and that's their main concern. Now, young people don't worry about the economy because they're not part of it. As soon as two people get married and have kids, all of their concern is about paying the mortgage, paying the rent, having food, taking care of each other, taking care of their children, having cheap or free hospitals nearby, and so on. So you can say that you don't care about the economy right up until you have a family. And then that's all you focus on forever for the rest of your life. I mean, literally, people spend so much of their life worrying about the economy and their job and having a job and getting another job and how much are they getting paid and how much does food cost and what's inflation and what's the interest rate and how should I invest and and how am I going to retire? Where's my money going to come from and how much is schooling cost? How much is higher education? How much does it cost to get a flu vaccine? How much does it cost if I have a catastrophic ailment, cancer or something? And how do I avoid financial ruin? And how do I make sure my kids are going to be okay? That's all you think about the rest of your life. And then when you retire, people still generally run around thinking about the same things because they've had, an entire adult life of being ridden with anxiety about the economy. This is learned behavior. And you start learning it when you have other people to take care of. When it's not just you sitting on the beach drinking, pina coladas, all of a sudden you start caring about these things. That's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses for people. It's a fact. Like physics is a fact. And if you think that people are just going to give up on the fact that they're living precariously within the economy, they're not going to give up on that. Because the fact is they need money to survive. And if you're 17 years old and someone's providing everything for you, then that fact never occurred to you. But when you're 25 or 27 and now you have a spouse and you have a child, well, all of a sudden, that's all you want to talk about is your stinking job and stinking inflation and the prime rate and whether you can ever afford housing. Those are facts. Deny them if you want to, and you're going to grow up and you're going to regret that you didn't understand. Here's the things that the protesters was going on about. Youth don't vote for fossil fuels. No, but youth survive with fossil fuels. Don't be a fossil fool. Okay, so if I'm going to be wise on fossil fuels, then that means I demand that they be left in the ground. Is that what you want? Because that's the wise thing to do. Otherwise, what are you asking for here? Climate crisis equals extermination by capitalism. No, it doesn't. You can't blame the capitalists for this. The climate crisis is global heating, and that's extermination by physics. My dude, you're going to be cooked. You're going to be cooked. And if you say, excuse me, yes, fine, I'll be cooked by global heating. But it's capitalism's fault. Really? They're just providing the goods and services that you require to survive, which is everything. All your food, all your electricity, all your water, all your education, everything you think, everything you see, everything you breathe, everything comes from fossil fuel consumption and goods manufactured by capitalists somewhere in the world, including, of course, China and India and Japan and Taiwan and America and Europe and, Africa and South America. And all the boats and all the airplanes and all the cargo moving this way and that way. And that's all fossil fuels. Okay? And yes, that will exterminate you. But that's not capitalism that's exterminating you. It's all the fossil fuels we burn, giving you all the things you need every single day, 24 hours a day. And once again, that terrible number. Just to keep civilization rolling along, they have to extract from the ground, and just the crude oil alone, 100 million barrels every single fucking day. For you. Who are embedded in civilization. You. Me. Those people driving up and down in front of my house. We feel like we are creating an impact in the community. You might be. However, we are not listened to enough. Well, I think they're listening. You're just not asking for anything. There is more that needs to be done. Name one thing. One thing. Name one. Especially right now when the climate catastrophes are intensifying. Oh, yes, they are. Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Especially right now. Climate catastrophes are intensifying. Oh, and as a matter of fact, they will continue to intensify for a couple of decades. Oh, and then if they stop intensifying, then they stay at that level of intensity, whatever that level is. It's probably going to be a fucking nightmare on a daily basis. But whatever that level is, then they stay that way for thousands of years. So with that, yes, you got a big problem. Oh, yes. Oh, indeed. You do have a problem, sir, ma'am. You do have a problem. And I am very confident that you don't even comprehend even 1/100th of the scale of your problem. Your problem is that what we have now is capable of ending civilization. And there's more coming. Oh, yes. Oh, indeed. Oh, yes, you do have a problem. And it is intensifying, and it will continue to do so. Now, what do you propose? I propose we do something. Name something. Not my responsibility. The leaders have to figure that out. Okay, well, what if they propose ending civilization by leaving fossil fuels in the ground? We have to do something that's fair. So, you want the fossil fuels? Yes, but I want them in a way that doesn't destroy the environment and civilization, and destroy the climate. Okay, but physics says if you burn fossil fuels, you're going to get global heating. I don't care about global heating. I only care about the climate. Okay, then we're done here. I got no further questions. Emissions from advanced or industrialized economies have been falling since 2003, mostly because of COVID. Not because anybody actually did fuck all, okay? And they were the lowest in more than 50 years. Yeah, we'll see about that. We're still hauling 100 million barrels of oil out of the ground every single fucking day. We're doing something with that shit, and the number keeps going up. Every year we pull more out of the ground than we did the year before. Something's going on. Someone's using less, but something's going on. Figure it out. Coal emissions in rich countries are down to levels seen in the year 1900. We're still pulling coal out of the ground, and we're still pulling 100 million barrels a day of fossil fuels. I mean, of crude oil. Something's going on. In the past 5 years, clean energy sources have grown twice as fast as fossil fuels. Clean energy sources exclusively create electricity. If you're going to use electricity to replace all the uses we have for gasoline, diesel, and kerosene, then you need 10 times more electricity than you have right now. Electricity is very difficult to generate from almost anything except, I guess, nuclear power. And that has its own set of problems. The energy available in crude oil and its derivatives like gas, diesel, and kerosene, the energy available in these fuels is simply beyond imagination. You simply can't comprehend. A gallon of gas will propel a 3-ton truck 25 miles at 60 miles an hour. It's hard to imagine doing that in any other way. Well, but we have electric trucks and we have electric sedans. Yes, you do. Okay. And so if you could transition some of the rolling fleet to electric, then you have to generate more electricity for those things. And that's what I guess it's more coal plants, right? It's more fossil fuel energy being consumed to make electricity. Unless you deliberately say we can't do that. We have to build nuclear power plants. We must build solar. We must build wind farms, and it has to be enough to make up for, what we're losing when we stop burning the gasoline and we start having electric cars. We have to make up for that. Is anyone doing that? Is that a project for anybody? That's not a project for anybody. No country on earth has that project. They'll make electric cars and they'll sell them to you, but they don't care that it's making any impact, or they must now produce more electricity for all these electric cars on the roads. They're just letting the market figure that out. There's no environmental project, government level project to address that reality, because it's such a tiny fraction of what the government does. The amount of energy we're offsetting with clean energy for cars is tiny. It's tiny. There aren't that many electric cars. We're making progress even if it's slow. Okay. Why did my browser crash? Our job right now is to accelerate that progress. Progress, the word progress is doing a lot of work here. What are you talking about? Because the only thing that matters at this point is leaving fossil fuels in the ground. What's going to save us and keep us alive, although it won't keep all of us alive, but what will save the planet, if you really care about that, and what will save any vestige of civilization, is to stop the globe from heating to a point where humans cannot survive on the surface of the earth. That's your task, to do that. Now, what is the progress on reducing or eliminating global heating? The answer is nothing. In fact, the globe is getting hotter more recently than it has been in the past. In fact, we are now seeing impacts from global heating in the cryosphere, in the forests, the biosphere, right? Forests are on fire, the ice is melting. We're getting catastrophic flooding in Europe right now, and I just saw news today that they're expecting catastrophic flooding in the UK. All that's from global heating. And the guy who today on the news, he said, yeah, I've been doing weather in the UK for 40 years, and I can tell you, we can't even predict the storms anymore. There's too much chaos in the system. See my earlier video on chaos. And it's all the rain that's coming down in the UK and in Europe causing all this floods is all from the hot oceans, heated by global heating. Have you made any progress with any of that shit? Are the oceans cooling? Is the planet cooling? Are we reducing? No. Actually, and scientists are actually debating this among themselves. There's some argument about it. It's really kind of obscene that they're arguing about this. But there are scientists who want to argue that we're making progress. But if you look at the data, the heating is increasing. And My goodness, that also comports with the increase in our consumption of fossil fuels. I wonder if there could be a correlation. Yes, of course there's a correlation. It's the burning the fossil fuels and increasing that activity that's adding and increasing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, which increases the amount of global heating. And so the global heating is not just going up, but the rate of increase is increasing. That's called acceleration. That's what we're accelerating, people, because we don't talk clearly on what the problem is. We talk around it. We talk around it, around it, and around it. And the greatest disservice to the activist community was when the fossil fuel industry reframed the problem as away from what at the time was called global warming. I mean, you have to be pretty old to remember that. I mean, put on your way back cap and remember when it was called global warming. And then the capitalists came along and convinced people to call it climate change. And it was an easy sell. No, there was no resistance to changing it from global warming to climate change. Everybody now wants to talk about climate change because it's a non-thing, and everybody knows that. On some subconscious level, everyone understands that demanding climate action, demanding climate justice, accelerating progress on the climate, all these euphemisms don't amount to a hill of beans. They're completely meaningless. You can string the words together in sentences, but the sentences have no meaning. Now, before I leave this article and leave these stupid ads, I want to point something else on this first picture. And I could have mentioned it at the time, but I didn't want to. Here are all these New York protesters, all these activists, and they're walking across the bridge and they're waving their banners and they're chanting and they're banging drums and they're demanding climate action. However, right here in the center, declare climate emergency. Now that's interesting. Here I was prepared to rail about these people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And I'm not saying that just to be a curmudgeon and a mean old man. I'm a scientist. And these people don't have any idea what they're talking about. I know exactly what's happening. Everyone in this field knows exactly what's happening to the earth. Exactly what's happening. And these climate activists haven't got a clue. It's not even their fault that they don't have a clue. I'm not being mean. They're not being given a clue. And they're not scientists. And they don't know how to read the papers. And frankly, they're not interested. Fine, I get it. It's a niche where we're all us scientists are goofballs. We've all got behavioral issues and we don't get invited to parties and no one wants to visit with us. And as soon as you want to talk about your cat memes, we want to talk about science. We're not fun to be around, especially recently with goddamn global heating, right? That's all we want to talk about. It's boring and it's scary. But look at this. Declare climate emergency. Now, I haven't seen that. I've never seen that. I'm about to go over here and look at some other things, but keep that in mind. Keep this. Declare climate emergency. That's actionable. Demanding climate justice is hoo-ha. Well, what are you even talking about? Justice for who? What? How? Give me some proposals here, okay? But declare climate action? I'm sorry, I just said it myself. Declare climate emergency. That's actionable. You could do that. If you were the president of the United States, you could have a press conference and you could bring the press in and you could stand up there and you could say, okay, I'm declaring a climate emergency. You could do that. That's the thing you could do. You can't fight climate change as president of the United States. You can't stop, polluters. You can't fight global heating. You can't change the level of CO2 in the atmosphere. You can't alter the laws of physics. You can't declare, energy imbalances illegal. You can't do any of those things as president. But as a matter of fact, right there, declare climate emergency. You could fucking do that. You could actually do that. Press conference today, Joe Biden, quavering voice, can barely stand up, could declare a climate emergency. Now, it's still meaningless he would have to give a 2-hour presentation. Well, he wouldn't do it. Somebody would have to come onto the podium after him and say, okay, the president has just declared a climate emergency. This would be the 2 hour. It might even be a 3-day conference, okay? These are the measures that because we now have a climate emergency, these are the measures we're going to take to act upon the fact that we are now in a climate emergency. And by the way, if you think that that's meaningless and that's trivial and we don't know what we're talking about, the president could also declare war. Who would be the enemy right now? I don't know. What? Iran, Russia, China? Who would it be? Doesn't matter. Okay, doesn't matter. And talking theoreticals here. The president of the United States, well, actually in America, the president of the United States cannot declare war. But the president of the United States could issue a request to Congress to declare war. And let's say that there was a clear and present danger. Let's say we had the equivalent of another Pearl Harbor bombing, okay? And so the president jumps on the podium, all the press are around, flashing light bulbs, okay? And he asks Congress to declare war on X, okay? Then Congress would meet. And they'd be the vice president would be there, and working with the vice president who represents the administration, the executive branch, Congress would then do all these things to prepare the country for being at war, because we're at war now. You could do something. You see the difference in the conversation? We want climate justice, whatever that means. Okay, now let's gear up for war. Okay, you could do something. You could go to industry and tell them, start building missiles and tanks and boats and planes. That's what they did in the Second World War. Go to Henry Ford, tell him, start building tanks, or the equivalent thereof. You could go to the military branches. What do you need? How many troops do you need? What money do you need? How are we going to get more people in the army? Or we're going to have to, conscript them. We're going to have to open up all the recruitment offices and get the young men and women in there and get them signed up to join the army because we're at war and we have to do this now. And they could do that because they're doing something, because they're at war, because the president declared war. So if the president were to declare a climate emergency, then in theory, we could do things. Climate emergency has been declared. It's an emergency. When you have an emergency, you act like you're in an emergency. What do we have to do? Get the military involved. Get industry involved. Get the states involved. Get all the governors in one room and talk to the governors about the climate emergency. And here's what you have to do. We have to prepare and the hardships and everything else. Web page went down. I guess they don't like me anymore. But that's okay because I want to go over here. So I went over here because I wanted to show some images of the protests. I think I actually did a search for German climate protests, but I could have done New York City just as well. Maybe I should do New York City. Anyway, I did the German climate protests to see what they were talking about in Germany. And this picture was one of the, so lots of pictures here, right? All these banners, most of them in German. But anyway, some of them not in German because they know they're on TV. So they have to appeal to a wide audience. So let's look at some of these. I pulled this one up here, Stop Fossil, and they did this clever thing. They have a word. They have Stop Fossil Fools. Who is that? People driving cars? Because I don't think that's what they mean. Stop Fossil Fuels. Now, stopping fossil fuels, it kind of sounds like they know what they're asking for. But do they? Because I have seen climate activists say stop fossil fuels, and then when they clarify what that means, what they mean is no new drilling, no new pipelines. Okay? So they don't really mean stop fossil fuels. They just have this kind of feel-good thing they want, which is don't do new things. Now, actually, that is actionable. Governments could say, the governments own the fossil fuel resources, right? The coal that's in the ground, all belongs to the government. It belongs to the people, but really it belongs to the government. Just like back in medieval days, it belonged to the king. Most people don't know this, but the king owned all the land. And if you had land, it's because the king wrote you a charter to use his land for something that he approved of. And so now the government still own all the land. They like that part of monarchy. They liked that part. So the government still maintains title, basically ownership of all the land. And you and you and you are given access to parts of it to do things that will benefit society, including, of course, as we know, cutting down all the forests, digging up all the coal, polluting all the rivers, destroying all the native indigenous peoples. And so if you do those things, then the government will approve your charter to use the resources of the land to benefit the people, whatever that means. So the government could, and in some rare instances has, withdrawn leases to exploit areas for drilling for gas and drilling for oil and pulling the coal out of the ground and other things. So the government can withdraw access to those things. And they could. So this could be actionable. Stop fossil fuels. If you define stopping fossil fuels as no new extraction. And when you get these activists backed into a corner, say, okay, what do you really mean stop fossil fuels? I mean, what does that really mean? I know, I understand the English language, but what do you mean when you write that? Well, what we really mean is no new oil drilling, no new pipelines, no new exploitation of the fossil fuels. That's what we really mean. Okay, fine. That's what you mean by stop fossil fuels. But stop fossil fuels is vague enough to mean anything to anybody until you really clarify what you mean by that. So I put this up here. Again, narrative warfare. What do you mean exactly? Well, do I have to be exact? Yes, because I'm dealing with physics. And physics is very exact. And we have a very exact, peculiar problem with CO2 in the atmosphere. And it comes from our combustion of fossil fuels, which we must pull from the ground first. So where in that statement of the problem, which I did in one breath, okay? One sentence, one breath. I just stated the problem. Where in that problem statement are you stopping something? Because you can't remove the CO2 from the atmosphere, which is causing global heating. So you can't stop global heating. That's physics. Deal with it, Sparky. You can't stop the combustion of fossil fuels emitting CO2. That's physics. You probably can't even stop the combustion of fossil fuels. Once they're out of the ground, people are going to burn them. And we're pulling out 100 million barrels a day of crude oil alone. So every day we have to find some use somewhere for 100 million barrels a day of fossil fuels, of crude oil. Every single day we got to find more ways to burn crude oil. Because every day we pull 100 million barrels of crude oil out of the ground somewhere and everywhere. And so what are we going to do? Well, you could stop at the beginning. You could stop extracting crude oil from the ground. And of course, natural gas and coal and the whole works. But if you ever got to that point in the discussion, having stated the problem, which I did in one sentence, in one breath, having stated the problem clearly, and having worked your way through the problem, getting past all the physics parts that you can't really do anything about, and you finally get to the part where, well, the problem is finally, ultimately, we're pulling fossil fuels out of the ground and setting them on fire. Well, there you go. There you go. That's something you could stop, because you could stop that. You could stop that. Joe Biden, President of the United States, could get on the podium, declare a climate emergency, and, he could take another breath, and in the next breath he could say, and we must leave all fossil fuels in the ground because of our climate emergency. He could do that. He could say that. Is he going to say those words? No, he's not going to say those words. He's not even going to declare a climate emergency. Because if he did that, he would have to say more words like, now we must leave fossil fuels in the ground. So he's not going to declare any fucking climate emergency, because that implies he's got to do something else. Because the reporters in that room they're primed. Their pencils are sharp and they're ready for his answer. Right? I'm going to write this down right now. It's going to be historic. All right, Mr. President, you declared a climate emergency. Now what? I'm ready. I'm ready to write it down. Well, now what? Let's go. Let's hear it. You're going to say it? You're going to say the words, leave fossil fuels in the ground? I want to write it down. My pencil is sharp. I'm ready to go. You're going to say it? You're going to say it? You're going to say it? I dare you to say it. I dare you to say it. I want to write it down when you do. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to call my editor, front page, 4-inch letters. Say it. I dare you. And he won't. Therefore, he can't declare a climate emergency, because he's not going to say the thing. What else we got here? Our future is on your shoulders. Oh, really? Our future. So all these people, their future is on someone else's shoulders. Isn't that cute? They're the ones burning the fossil fuels. They drove themselves to this protest. Their entire lives are immersed, completely submerged in fossil fuel consumption. And yet, their future is on someone else's shoulders. Isn't that cute? Isn't that convenient? What else have they got going on here? And I'm not saying these things to be mean. I don't intend to be mean. I just want it clearly understood that nothing they're saying implies an action. Nothing. Even blaming someone else does not imply an action. What are you going to do? Hang them? Set them on fire? What are you really proposing? If it's on someone else's shoulders, who is that someone else? And how are you going to punish them for your loss of a future? What are you saying? What is your proposal? They don't have one. All they have is narrative warfare. That's not going to save them. Narrative warfare will not save them. What will save them? Leaving fossil fuels in the ground will save some. And it dooms quite a few others to death, quite frankly, to becoming unalive. So do it or don't, right? Pull the lever or don't pull the lever. That's the trolley problem. Pull the lever or don't. Most of them won't. They'll protest because that makes them feel good, but they're not going to do anything else. The Titanic would have had no problem in 2021. The Titanic was sunk by hitting an iceberg that came from the island of Greenland. And they even know what fjord it probably floated out from. So what they're saying here is that this time in the century, 2021, the Titanic would not have had an iceberg to run into. Is that right? I don't know. Does it matter? So what? It's a statement, but does it really matter? What are you trying to say? What are you asking for? You're pointing out that the planet is so hot that we can't have icebergs? That's probably true. Now what? You're protesting. You're wanting change. And the Titanic can now sail across the North Atlantic without fear of hitting icebergs. Isn't that a good thing? You want to change that? You want icebergs in front of all the ocean liners? What are you asking for here? Because I don't get it. I'm sure the dinosaurs thought they had time too. The dinosaurs were not hit by climate change that they created. The dinosaurs were hit by a meteorite. And if we were hit by a meteorite today, we would be no more to blame for that than the dinosaurs were. The problem is completely different. This is a misstatement, a deliberate misstatement of the problem. The dinosaurs didn't have time because they weren't creating their problem. All they had to do was wait to be hit by the meteorite. And we might be hit by a meteorite too, and that's not our fault. The problem is we are creating this problem. We are burning the fossil fuels after pulling them out of the ground. So this statement that the dinosaurs thought they had time too, it doesn't propose any action. We're not being threatened by a meteor. We are doing this to ourselves. Do you want to stop doing this to yourself? Then stop burning fossil fuels. That's what you have to do. They're not asking for that. They're just making this vague platitude about, the dinosaurs thought they had time. The dinosaurs weren't hit by climate change. They didn't cause their problem. They had no choice. We have a choice. What do you propose we do with our choices? If we're at a fork in the road and we can either continue to burn fossil fuels or not continue to burn fossil fuels, and we need to make a decision right now, since you're worried about how long it takes to make a decision, what decision do you want? Tell me. I'd like to hear it. I'm genuinely interested in what decision you think we should make vis-a-vis fossil fuels right now. Not wasting any time. What do you want to do? Do, being the operant term. What action do you actually want to take? What are you proposing? What should we do? Verb, to do. To take some action. What should it be? You need this earth, so don't destroy it. Nobody's destroying the earth, let me point out. That goes back to the question of, there are polluters and they're destroying the environment. That's not your problem right now. It's a problem, and we might want to stop destroying the environment because we're really going to need it later. But we've already kind of destroyed the environment. It's already kind of gone. So let's not talk about that so much as why might we need the Earth's environment? Why might we need it? You need this Earth. How exactly do we need the Earth? Because what I need right now is electricity and internet and water at the tap and food at the market and gasoline for my car and diesel, kerosene, jet fuel for the airline industry. Those are the things I need right now. Why would I ever need the Earth? I can answer that question for you. I actually know the answer to that. I know why you need the Earth. I actually know why you need the Earth. That's a true statement. You need the Earth because global heating is going to destroy civilization. And when it does, you will need the Earth to provide the usual services that the Earth has provided for us for hundreds of thousands of years. And what do we do with the Earth? We grow food. We keep domestic animals. We create shelter. We create clothing, food, clothing, shelter, water. We build villages. We birth our children. We raise our kids and our families. We take care of our elders, all within the confines of the earth. And the abundance of the earth, the fresh water in the streams and rivers and lakes, the herds of animals, the giving land and the fertile fields and the seeds and the crops and the harvest, and that's what we need from the earth. You don't need any of that right now because you've got modernity. You've got modern Western-inspired civilization. You don't need any of the things I just listed because of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels brings you everything that you do need right now today, embedded as you are in civilization. When you can no longer rely on civilization to bring you things you want because global heating is going to put an end to that, or we're going to take the other path and we're going to stop burning fossil fuels, and not burning fossil fuels will bring an end to that. No way out. Yeah, that's right. This is a wicked problem. That's right. This is a wicked problem. Look it up. Wikipedia. Wicked problem. Well, look it up. It's a thing. And when the problem lands, when we all go over the Seneca Cliff, and some of us survive, and we don't have fossil fuels, and we also, coincidentally, don't have modernity, then we're going to need the earth. And villages and people you can work with. And you're going to need seeds and shovels and fertilizers and domesticated animals. And you're going to need clean water and clean air and forests nearby and trade relationships with other villages. And you're going to need to establish perimeters and fences and security and cage your animals. And you're going to need the knowledge of how to make butter from dairy and how to make fabrics from plant fibers. And you're going to have to know how to make shoes and how to make hats and how to make clothing. And how to do all the things, and how to do herbal medicine, and how to everything. You're going to have to know how to do everything. Right now, you don't know jack about anything. Except how to turn your car on, and how to put gas in the tank. You know how to do that. So you can survive in civilization. You know how to drive a car and how to put gas in the tank. That's what you know. And that works great so long as you have modernity. But you're not going to have that anymore. Either because global heating is going to destroy it, or you're going to destroy it yourself by not burning fossil fuels. Yay! No modernity. Now what? Then you need the earth. This is a true statement. But he doesn't understand, he, she, they, don't understand why it's true. And wouldn't want to know. Let's see if I can find some others that aren't in German. Climate justice now. What the fuck does that even mean? What are you talking about? And if you really come down to it, it talks about more fair ways to burn fossil fuels. That's what it comes down to. If you really back these people into a corner. And they bother answering your question at all. if they've given any thought to it, what they mean by climate justice, they're probably going to say, we need to distribute the fossil fuel consumption to the countries that need it so that they can improve themselves and fight the harms going to be coming their way due to climate change and global heating. So they get to burn the fossil fuels. Yeah, that would be just. That's fair. They get to burn fossil fuels. So that's what it comes down to. They get to burn fossil fuels because that's just, and that's fair, and that's necessary. We got to save those people. It's not their fault. All this stuff. But it comes down to they get to burn fossil fuels. That's justice. Well, if the developing world gets to burn fossil fuels, guess who else gets to burn fossil fuels? Because there's still a fossil fuel industry. These people holding this sign, they all get to burn fossil fuels. Is there any chance? Is there any chance at all that that's what they're really wanting? If the third world gets to burn fossil fuels, because that's just and fair, well, then I get to burn fossil fuels because I need them. And that's also fair. They know what they're holding that banner up for. They want fossil fuels. They don't want to destroy the fossil fuel industry. They don't want to destroy the auto industry. They don't want to destroy the cell phone industry. And they don't want the 5G to go away. And they don't want the tap water to go away. And they don't want anything to stop. They want everything to go forward, just like it is forever on fossil fuels. And we'll be fair with the developing nations. There will be fairness, okay? They'll get some too. You know, they want the fossil fuels. Climate justice means we want the fossil fuels. We're just going to be fair about it. Give me a break. Physics doesn't care. Physics doesn't care. It's CO2 doesn't care where it came from or how fair it was or who got to generate the CO2 from burning fossil fuels. Physics doesn't care. Physics doesn't care how fair and just you were and how pure was your heart and how you shed tears of joy when those people got to burn more fossil fuels than they got to burn last year. Physics doesn't care. Physics doesn't care. And those people are still going to die. Now, they'll have their millionaires and billion, whatever, because they got to burn fossil fuels. Those people will flee from those countries and they won't die. And they will enter the ranks of the millionaires and billionaires who get to survive someplace else due to global heating. They'll run away because they got money. So, yeah, you'll have some people from the developing world, you know, Narendra Modi, he'll flee from India. He'll take his buddies with him, and then all the Indian people will die because of global heating, and he'll get away. Is that what you're after? Because I guess that's fair. A bunch of Indian millionaires, a bunch of Chinese millionaires get to run away from the problems that global heating is going to cause in their countries. That's fair. Okay, that's one definition of fairness. That's fine. So that's our goal. Good, fine. That could be our goal. It's a goal. It's what we want to do. It's not this bullshit climate justice now. We want to save more millionaires from countries that are going to become uninhabitable. Okay, that's a goal. Stated clearly, it is a stated goal. And then we get down into all these pictures of climate protesters. I can't even read these signs. There is no planet B, whatever. This stuff is bullshit. This stuff is nonsense. They're not asking for anything. They're not demanding save Mother Earth. Save our Mother Earth. Mother Earth is not what's in danger here. Your civilization is what is in danger. If you don't stop burning fossil fuels, then the resulting global heating will destroy your civilization. And if you stop burning fossil fuels, the lack of fossil fuels will destroy your civilization. Mother Earth is not in danger. You are. You are. What do you want? What do you want? Doesn't sound like you want to survive, because that's not what you're protesting for. All this, save our Mother Earth. Yay, motherhood. Moving on. What do you want? What is your problem? And I don't mean that in a mean way. What is the actual problem you are facing? Global heating. Physics. It's going to destroy everything. You want to do something about that? What exactly do you want to do about that? Because that's physics. Not much you can do with physics. You can get out of the way. What's this thing here? Love is in the air. And they crossed it out. I guess I should. Maybe it says CO2 is in the air. Yeah. So what? What do you want? Do you want less CO2 in the air? Oh, yeah, we can do that. Oh, yeah, that's totally actionable. You want less CO2 in the air? Well, actually, the amount of CO2 in the air right now will be there for millions of years. But but let's change what you want. Let's change. We can't change the amount of CO2 in the air, but we can change how much we're adding to it. That would be cool. What if we decide to reduce the amount of crude oil we pull out of the ground, and therefore somehow, in theory, reduce the amount of CO2 we're putting in the atmosphere? Does that sound good? Okay. So we want to leave the fossil fuels in the ground because that's what you're asking for. Really, that's what you're asking for. Why don't you just ask for that? Why instead of saying CO2 is in the air, why don't you just say leave fossil fuels in the ground? You could say that. You could turn that piece of cardboard over and take your crayon and draw on the back instead, leave fossil fuels in the ground. But you didn't do that. And you're not going to do that because that isn't what you want. Because if you wanted that, you could actually get that. And you don't want that. You want your fossil fuels. You just want some other kind of solution that does not involve depriving you of fossil fuels. So they're not going to say that. They're never going to say that. They're never going to say, leave it in the ground. Once in a while, you see something like stop fossil fuels, which sounds the same as leave it in the ground, but it's not. And when you really back them up and say, okay, what exactly are you proposing? It always comes down to no new drilling. Okay, fair enough. But the governments could do that. They really could do no new drilling. They could do that. But that's not leaving fossil fuels in the ground because we've already done a lot of drilling. We've already got pipelines. We've got oil wells everywhere. We've got fracking going on all over the place. So what about that stuff? Are you going to leave that in the ground? Because that's a different project. Is that what you're proposing? I doubt it. So here's one. We are unstoppable. I'm just getting the ones that are in English. I'm not reading them and saying, oh, what does this mean? I don't want to show that one. I'm showing every single one that's in English, okay? We are unstoppable. Another world is possible. This is along the lines of when they demand system change, not climate change. Who's we that are unstoppable? Because you can die. Climate change, global heating could kill you, as would the end of civilization. Almost certainly would kill you. So you can be stopped by this process. You absolutely, four square, absolutely guaranteed, could be stopped. And I could name several mechanisms by which you could be stopped. Not by government, not by goons, not by thugs, not by riot police. By the planet itself could stop you. And you're doing nothing to save yourself from that. Nothing. And holding this sign up doesn't do it. And physics isn't reading this. And physics doesn't care that you can't be stopped. Physics will stop you hard when you go over the Seneca Cliff. Another world is possible. Meaning what? What world? What are you talking about? Planet B? We're going to terraform Mars? Okay. We don't mean world. We need another system. Which system? A civilization? Another civilization is possible? Okay, let's talk about that. How? What kind of civilization? Describe it to me. Well, we're going to have every child has a pony. And everyone has housing. And everyone has free medical care. And everyone has, yeah. And you're doing all this with fossil fuels. You know that, right? Yes, but we'll innovate and we'll do something. Innovate how? What are you talking about? I'm talking about fossil fuels. That's a thing. Coal is a rock, okay? What are you talking about? What do you mean innovation and greening and changing the system and changing the economy? What does this even mean? This is just, I'm a scientist. I understand words. I do words all day long. I do data and words. It's simultaneously. What are you talking about when you talk about system change? What system changed how? And how does that actually save us from global heating? Because that is your problem. And they won't have an answer. And they'll accuse me of being mean-spirited, and I just don't get it, and I'm not on board. It's like, dude, you got a problem. You got a big fucking problem. Your Titanic has hit the climate iceberg, and you're going down, and that's your problem. The system, who's the captain, why did he hit the iceberg, who's supposed to be bailing out the boat, all that rigmarole has no bearing on the fact that this ship is going beneath the waves, and you're going to be on it. So what are you proposing to do about that? I'm done with this. I'm tired of this. You decide. Hold up two pictures and you're supposed to pick one. You decide which one you're going to pick. Are you ever going to decide to not burn fossil fuels? Because that's what you have to decide to do. Are you going to burn fossil fuels, or are you not going to burn fossil fuels? Oh, and by the way, your decision in that simple regard, that you're going to start riding a bike instead of driving a car, you're going to sell your car, have your car scrapped or whatever, that decision, that would be very brave, by the way. Nobody does that. Nobody makes that decision. Nobody. Find one person. Elevate them. Interview them. Put them on all the TV stations. Put them on Russia Today and the whole thing, right? You gave up fossil fuels? How'd you do that? What's your life like now? Well, I ride my bicycle to the supermarket. Oh, okay, wait. Then you're dependent on people bringing food to the supermarket for you, okay? Yeah, I understand you didn't drive your car to the supermarket, but you rode your bike to the supermarket. But the food got to the supermarket using fossil fuels. So you really didn't give up on fossil fuels. Yeah, but I stopped driving. Okay, that's fine. Oh, you could have bought an electric car too, right? And now your electric car takes you to the supermarket. Your electric car takes you to the sports stadium, and you're giving up on fossil fuels. Okay, that's one way. That's one decision you could make. You could make that decision, but you could not decide how the food gets to the supermarket. That is not in your wheelhouse. So pushing this onto people, the people must choose. There's only so much choice you have in this shit show. The rest of it is done for you on your behalf by other actors. And you have no choice. Now, you could choose to grow your own food. Do you have land? Do you have a lot of land? Do you have all the necessary equipment and the knowledge to grow your own food? And of course, you're not going to grow mangoes. So you can't have mangoes. You still have to go to the market to get your mangoes. But you could grow wheat, I guess, but that's not flour. So do you have a wheat mill? And do you have electricity to run the wheat mill? Or is it just a couple of, stones that you rub together? How are you doing any of this? Where's your water come from? Well, I have a faucet in the backyard. Well, that faucet is infrastructure that was established and is constantly maintained by somebody in a truck going up and down the road and using fossil fuels. And the water company and the reservoir that could be 300 miles away, and the pipelines from there to here, and the water filtration, and now you can go in your backyard, turn on the tap, and water your tomatoes. And you're growing your own food, except you're not, because you're still embedded in civilization for everything. I'm not saying all these things to be mean. I'm saying that there are only so many decisions you can make that will extricate you from this. And then let's say that you solve all the problems. You have your own well, and you have a hand pump. And seriously, where'd the hand pump come from? Okay, but let's say you figured all this out, and you got your well, and you got your hand pump, and you got your irrigation, and you've got a bunch of people living with you that help you with the crops, because you can't just do it alone. You need a small village. And now, but you're still surrounded by civilization. And they haven't stopped. You made all these decisions, and you even made your own hand pump out of wood because you're determined not to be in the system. You made your own hand pump from hand tools and a piece of wood. And now you can get the water out of your well that you dug with a shovel, and you figured all this out. You spent your whole life figuring this out, but you're still surrounded by civilization. And what happens when that doesn't work for them? They're going to lose their minds. They're going to lose their fucking minds. And you're going to be surrounded by people who have lost the plot. You did it for yourself. You made all the decisions. You sacrificed. You did without. You were hungry some days because there wasn't enough food in your backyard, and there wasn't enough water in the well, and you had to scrimp, and you survived, and it was difficult, and you couldn't go to the doctor for the illness, and you lost one of your children, and you lost your elders, and no one got education except you cracked open a book once in a while and read to the children, and you didn't have any connection to civilization, and you figured it all out, and then the world falls apart around you. And how high are your walls at that point? Because you figured it out. It was your choice. You decided. You sacrificed. You did all the things. And no one else did because they didn't have to. It was a personal choice. And of course, no one's going to go that far. No one's going to go that far. All they're going to do, I chose today, only today, but I chose today to ride my bike to the market and get the food that came from Mexico in South America. That's what I did. That was my choice today. I rode a bike. Good on you, I guess. I could go on like this all day. I kind of have to go on like this all day. I'm not going to. It's a waste of my time to do this. Nobody gets it. No one's going to get it. They will never understand what it is they're asking for. They're protesting, they're demanding action, and they actually have given not 30 seconds of thought to what they want. They haven't given 30 seconds of thought. They haven't given 10 seconds of thought. They picked the cardboard, they picked the colors, they wrote the thing down. They didn't even think about what they were writing down, except that it sounded clever. They thought they're being clever. They didn't think about their problem. Never, ever, forever will they think about their actual problem and their actual solution, which is abandoning fossil fuels. And then doing all the things I just described that are personal choices. Creating a village, tilling the land, having a well, having a pump, figuring out your seeds, figuring out how to do agriculture, having your domesticated animals, having your fences, having your defensive systems. Figuring it all that out. That's actually what you have to do. No one's going to do that until they have to, until they absolutely have to. That means they've already gone over the Seneca Cliff. And all these protests about, we need climate justice and climate action, and governments are failing to take action on climate, and all this malarkey. It's just malarkey. It's just meaningless. It's a kind of narrative warfare, but it's meaningless. Narrative warfare has the principle of being meaningless, or worse, misdirecting. Propaganda is narrative warfare. So you either want to misdirect people using your narrative warfare, or you want to completely ignore what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of narrative warfare, a lot of this climate protesting narrative warfare is people who just don't want to change. It really is. And they'll blame the banks, and they'll blame the government, and they'll blame the fossil fuel industries. But without those three things working tirelessly 24/7, you can't have modernity. And without those three pillars of civilization working hard every single day to extract from the ground every single day, what's the number again? 100 million barrels of oil a day. The banks and the companies and the governments every single day must figure out how to extract from the ground for your benefit to keep civilization working. 100 million barrels of oil every single fucking day for you and me, for these people, so they can protest, so they can drive to the fucking protest in their fucking car. Every single day, 100 million barrels of oil a day. And that's not going to stop. And they don't want it to. At best, they want it to be done fairly. Everybody gets oil now. Everybody has to have their own economic success. Everybody has to have an iPhone. Everybody must have freedom of speech. Everybody needs to get fossil fuels. It must be fair. It must be equitable. That's what they really want. They want more. They don't want 100 million barrels of oil a day just to Europe and the US, just to the developed world. They want 200 million barrels of oil a day so that India and China and Africa and South America can all raise all the boats and they all get an iPhone and every child gets a pony. It's all fair and equitable and just. And, they want 200 million barrels of oil a day every single day. That's what they want. They don't want zero. And that's not the deal. They want justice. They want more. And that's how we go over the Seneca Cliff. The climate is changing. Why aren't we? That's a good question. I would rephrase it. The globe is heating up and civilization is threatened. Why aren't we changing? Nobody wants change. Nobody wants change. They're never going to ask for change. They're never going to want to sink this ship. They're all on the same ship, and they don't want this thing to go down. They don't want to go over the Seneca Cliff. They're not going to pull the lever that ends civilization by leaving fossil fuels in the ground. Never do it. They'll never do it. They can't face it. It's too horrifying. And no one wants to do something that causes a nightmare. So hands off. And I'll protest so I feel good about myself, so I can sleep at night, so that my personal trauma is somewhat ameliorated and addressed. But I'm not going to rock the boat, and I'm not going to sink the Titanic. I'm not going to sink the Titanic. They won't. They won't sink the Titanic. And the equivalent of sinking the Titanic is getting off of fossil fuels. Embrace village life. Surround yourself with people who are of a like mind and are willing to work hard, and find some land and till the land and build habitat for all your people, and figure out how to do all that, and how you can have dairy products, and how you can have shoes made out of leather, and how you can have woven cloth and hats and gloves, and how to make shovels, how to have a blacksmith, how to use scrap iron to make things that you're going to need. You have to figure all this out. It took thousands of years for humans to figure all that out before. Thousands of years. 10,000 years we spent figuring out village life. And we threw it all away over the course of 200 years. We just threw it all away. And we all embraced modernity. And now we're done. Now we're done. Wow. Wow. Well, you better figure out village life. I don't know what that means for you. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it. Not my responsibility. It is your responsibility. Your responsibility is to survive. That's your responsibility. So, get on with it. Now, what I want to see at protests is leave fossil fuels in the ground. When I start seeing that regularly at protests, they'll say, they've turned the corner. They're ready to have the conversation about how do we live without fossil fuels. We, whoever we are, by the way. And my guess is it's much, much less than 1% of the current human population survives without fossil fuels. Much less than 1%. 1% of the current population is about 80 million people. I don't think this planet can support 80 million people, period. 8 million, that's a 1/10 of 1% of the current population. 8 million, yeah, about 8 million humans can survive on this planet, given the shape it's in. And given the harm that is still coming for us from global heating. There is much worse than what we're having now. And it is coming. And it cannot be stopped because physics. And when it lands, when it comes, it's going to be the end of civilization and the end of 8,000 million people. Where the ending stops, I don't know. 8 million is a good guess. 8 million millionaires, right? They're going to be fine. I mean, it's going to be a hardship for them too, but they got the resources. They'll hire the armies. They'll have all the mechanisms they need, and they will go to northern Canada inside the Arctic Circle and clear cut the forest and build themselves a fortress and tough it out. Or like Elon Musk, they'll go to Mars and they'll sit on Mars and wait and tough it out until 8,000 million people are dead. And then they'll come back and they'll start over. That's what going over the Seneca Cliff really means. Toughing it out, starting over. Wow. Wow. That's a big wow from me, folks. Good luck out there. Get to work. Get to work. Do what you got to do. Figure out how to live without fossil fuels. Every way you can figure it out. And then learn all the things you have to learn on how to survive without food in the market. Figure it out. Investigate it. Watch the videos. Think about it. Keep a journal. Talk to your friends. Talk to your neighbors. Everyone's going to think you're nuts. Do it anyway. It's the only way you're going to survive. How long do you have? 5 years? 2? I guess we're about